You're listening to Heal Through Humor, hosted by yours truly, Talia Bombola. I'm a licensed therapist on a mission to help others learn about themselves and laugh along the way. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Heal Through Humor. Today, I'm really excited to invite a very cool podcast that I was on the other day. And you also meet her. She's known as the Modern Yenta, which I love. And she will come on in just a few moments. So I'm very excited because, especially, she has this way of making you feel really like warm and invited. And it's going to be a fun interview. If you have any questions, as always, you can put them in as we're going along. We may not get to them right away. This is more of a podcast style format, so it's not as much Q&A as a typical live would be. So when you're asking your questions, keep in mind that it's more like, what would I say to myself if I were on a podcast? So let's get Abby in here and get started. This is going to be so exciting. Let's see. Instagram's been giving me kind of trouble lately with followers, or I think people trying to join lives. So let's hope this works. Or you go the other way. I think it should work. No. Okay, we may have to restart. Let's see here. This could work. Fingers crossed. Yay!
Hey, Talia.
It worked.
It
Alright.
worked.
Instagram's been giving me trouble lately, so it's either it works perfectly, or it takes like 20 minutes just to get the person in the room. So
Well, we're here. It's Monday. We're surviving. So
yes, I am so excited to talk to you today. I had a great time on your podcast last week, and I'm super looking forward to hearing your perspective on modern day dating and matchmaking, which is something that you do. So please introduce yourself. Tell us all about what you do. I want to hear.
yeah, so I am Abby Rosenblum, aka Modern Yenta on IG, and I am a matchmaker. So somehow that pause. Sorry. So I'm a matchmaker, and that means that I help people find love, get ready to find love, and navigate through all the craziness that can come up while you're trying to find that. So I set up blind dates, I host singles events, and work mostly in the Colorado area. But if you are somewhere else, you can still let me know, and I can send you to one of my matchmakers in another city.
So, what got you started in this practice, I guess, like this job? It's a pretty fascinating thing to do for a living to help people find love in this way of like, I have this person, and then I think these people will meet.
Right. Yeah. It's like, how in the world did you even start this? So I was online dating, went on a ton of really good and really bad dates and a lot in between. And I eventually met my husband that way. But throughout all of that, I was just wondering, like, what if I didn't have to do online dating? Like, what if there was a way someone could pick someone for me?
Yeah.
My friends didn't really have any good leads on people. So what if there was a professional that actually like knew a ton of people in my area and could introduce? And I was like, well, I should just do that. I know a lot of people. Wouldn't this be fun? So the business was born honestly as a kind of side fun thing that I did for a couple of years. And now it has turned into my full-blown job and a full-time job for a lot of other people too.
Yes, I am. We met through, I think through Instagram, but definitely we're different parts of different circles of like matchmaking and dating and having the ability to have other people to bounce ideas off of and learn about other career paths, other coaching styles, or matchmaking services. When I was on your past podcast, I mentioned there was a point before I actually met my partner. We met, but there was a point where I'd hired a matchmaker, like a professional service. And it was like a day or two after universally that like I ended up matching with them on Hinge instead. But I felt like that process of the interview, getting clear on what you want, what you don't want is just as important to be clear on. That alone really prepared me. And then I think like set the sign for the Hinge universal feelers to be like, are you sure that you want this? And then going on that process. Cause I would love to hear your opinion. Are there different types of clients who kind of are just like so busy I can't find somebody because of that versus I don't have a lot of confidence in my relationship skills? Like, what are the types of issues or concerns that people come in with?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of three different things people come in with. So one is like I'm in my 20s, maybe early 30s, and I haven't really dated and I don't know what I'm doing. So we're kind of starting from square one. Then there's, I'm divorced and now I'm getting back into things. And I
Yes.
also am confused and don't know what I'm doing. And, dating apps weren't a thing maybe when that person was dating, you know, 20 some years ago. And, then I also get the people that are just like, I am so busy. Like, I'm a total catch. I'm so busy. And I just also maybe I'm someone who doesn't want to be on the apps. Maybe I run a company. I
Yep.
don't want my employees to see
That
things
was
like that.
that was for sure me and the lady. I told her she was so nice. She's like, "No offense, you seem great. Are you like available enough to go on dates with all that you do?" And I was that is painfully accurate, and I will take that under consideration. Thank you, counselor. Court adjourned because
Oh,
it's
I
just
love it.
hard. It's hard to find. I think difficult nowadays with all that we're told, and especially if that goes against not in a combative way, but it doesn't align with how we were raised or the system that we were used to because technology so rapidly advances the way that we're able to meet and relate to other people. It's really hard to keep up, even with the new dating apps I've seen. I'm like, this is a thing? I didn't even know this app. Like, what is this? I feel like I'm 60 looking at it like, what's this blink thing? What's this? Like, I just have no clue what all of them are on now, thankfully being off them, but knowing what that's like is probably so helpful for you when assisting your clients because it takes that like, I don't really want to go on dating apps that, whatever we have beliefs about when we think about dating apps, it kind of takes, I think, that off the table. What would you say?
Oh, it's so true. I mean, I get a lot of people where they're like, I've done the dating app thing. I absolutely hate it. Like, never make me go back there. And I'm like, yeah, you definitely don't have to. Like, you've come to the right place. But I have a lot of other people too, where it's actually really nice to match up matchmaking and dating apps and use them together because
Yes.
then the world truly is your oyster if you can approach dating apps from a more mindful way,
Yeah.
and not just like write on 1,000 people and then put your phone down, but kind of having both to
Yeah.
use. In my mind, I'm like, I don't care how people I work with meet someone, whether it's through me, through a dating app. I
Mhm.
had a client I was working with meet someone while they were on vacation just because they had
Sure.
like such an open mind.
Yep.
Um, and to me, that's still a win. Like, I don't need to be the person always to introduce.
I think sometimes, yeah, we're like a conduit almost, like this middle person or their awarenesses that they have while talking to us are like, "Oh, that open-mindedness, that change in belief allowed me to actually understand who I'd like to be with. I became more attractive to and attracted to kind of the right person for me." So even if it's not directly through matchmaking, I love that you have them do both if they're comfortable with it. It takes the sting out of each because if you're only focused on apps and women especially are really affected by the written word, scrolling through, we read prompts and this and we're diligent often, or we're just the ones that are like, he's hot, he's not hot, he's not. There's so much nuance to it, but matchmaking is a lot more cultivated and less icky than like a Netflix show that's like, let's personality match you. Maybe we actually don't know and put you in a room and good luck.
Right. Like, have you been watching The Ultimatum? That just like the most toxic thing I've ever seen.
I have so many thoughts about that show, and I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts, the U Up podcast, shout out to them, they're life-saving, and they were doing an ultimatum review, and it's so everything they were saying, I was like, "I said this the first episode I saw, this is so validating." That is not the actual system that you would date in. Like, ultimatums happen, I'm the therapist, I understand that, like, couples often come in at, like, "We're at this point, fix it." I'm like, Okay, well, that's not how this works, but thanks for setting me up with, like, the worst possible conditions of, like, intensity." But there's this experience where, for those who don't know, the ultimate show in which one partner gave the other partner an ultimatum. They're going on the show to see if it's like they're the person they want to be with, the person they came with, or can they meet somebody else that's a better fit? And then you don't have to propose to the other person, but you can decide to date them. Typically, that is how relationships and breakups work, right? Let's say you and I are dating. I'm like, are you going to propose or not? And you're like, yeah, all right, it's not the time. We break up. I then go date other people, and maybe you do too. You don't see it. You don't have to live with it in a very small selected pool, witnessing it in live time and pick from each other's exes. Like, that's where it's not actually realistic at all. Like, ultimatum is very common, unfortunately, but that is not the rest of the experiment. Like, I imagine the director's like, okay, we've got a good one. You're like, we okay, that makes sense. And then they're like, and you'll date the exes. They're like, nope, you lost me. That is nope, we got to do that.
Right, like, they were pitching that show, and they were like, "Okay, how can we make this
Yeah.
just, like, as crazy and toxic and most enjoyable to watch ever?" And they're
Uh,
like, "Okay, yeah, we'll just make people date their exes in front of each other, and it'll be great."
mhm. And all of them, most of them rather, were quite young, under the age of 25 for the most part, or at 25. Frontal lobe development doesn't really finish until 25, generously, especially now with COVID. We'll see what the longitudinal impacts are on development because we didn't have the same social interactions. That you're not, and the frontal lobe is responsible for your critical thinking, your decision making skills, amongst other traits that you need to be like a well rounded, competent adult or have a chance at that. That's far too young to be making, I believe, my choice, those kinds of decisions. And the podcast this morning, I want to hear your feedback on this. They were talking about you're asking the silliest comparatively questions like, well, do you do laundry? They're asking probably the questions that are the reason the frustration ultimately led to the ultimatum. So like, you're not doing all these things. I'm gonna go find someone who does. And it's like, will this person be there if my parent is sick and in the hospital? Is probably a much more important question than do you like to separate your darks and lights? Like, there has to be this reality factor to what is the purpose of, a long-term partnership, especially if they're looking to get married.
Right, and I was thinking about that too when I was watching. I was like, everyone is so young, like in their 20s. I mean, there are lots of people that get married in their 20s,
Sure.
but I feel like maybe my view is skewed a little bit as a matchmaker, that the majority of people who come to me are more like 30s,
Yep.
40s, and older. I
Mm,
get some 20s where they're like, I've never dated, help me. And I'm like, okay, that's great. But I feel like some people like 20 to be 23 and be like, I want kids, I want a family. Like I had no freaking idea what I wanted when I was 23.
and if I did, I'm very glad I didn't end up with it because it would not have ended well. I can just tell you that right
Mhm.
age so much. Like, I often say that it's not a quarter life crisis. It's like the pain of your frontal lobe fully developing. That's why it's so chaotic. Like, adolescence is chaotic for a different reason. Then you get to your mid to late 20s where your task in life is, do I have an intimate relationship, a close relationship, not just sexual intimacy? Do I have a place in this world? And there can feel like there's this internal pressure and societal pressure for so many decades prior, like, get married, have kids. If you don't do that as a woman by 30, you're a failure. And now women are like, I'm good. I'd rather have my career set and then I'll have kids when it feels right. And who I have them with is more important than having them by a certain age. I think I've seen that shift as well. I don't know if you've seen that with your clients at all.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's more and more, it's almost like weird. You're in your 20s and you have a kid. It's like, well, you did that on purpose. I mean, of course,
What's
no
out?
shame to people who
Like,
do.
okay. Yeah.
But it seems like, especially with matchmaking, it is a lot of people who maybe are like, okay, focus on my career. And, that's good. I got like the promotion I really wanted and I feel really stable. And now I want to date is also a lot of what I get. So, if you have been focusing on career and not dating, um, sometimes I wonder, okay, how are you going to make space for something like that? You obviously did. You were kind of in that situation.
Yes. I realized that what I was not wanting, the dating I wasn't wanting to make space for was the horror story dating that you often hear of, like, and then they ghost, or you show up and you get catfish. Like, a lot of the things that the tropes have been around for a while, but I made the conscious choice of, what are the best days of the week, literally, for me to go on dates? When am I my most authentic self and least like very hyper focused work mode masculine me? That was helpful to carve out time. And knowing really wasn't gonna meet the person I was gonna spend the rest of my life with, like, out at the bars, etcetera. I maybe go out once a year. Like, the landscape in which you're picking the partners changed entirely, so it was really important to be authentic and congruent with what is my actual regular daily life, and where am I gonna meet people if not for those experiences, and that's where, like, dating apps or matchmaking came in, and going and doing some sort of fun activity, like going paddleboarding, going to like Pino's Palette and doing a wine and paint night, like going and doing things to see if I actually like being with them, not just like drinking poison in the dark in some restaurant and just being like, oh, this is so good. It's like, no, that's the alcohol talking. Like, that wasn't a factor for me when I was consciously dating. I wanted to like actually like the person. Could I see myself with them more than just enjoying their company for one dinner?
Right. Well, when you put it that way, yeah, a drink state sounds just horrific.
Yeah. And then people wonder, like, "Well, it felt so right." And I'm like, "Well, how many did you both have?" And they're like, "More than a few." And I was like, "Well, you're not acting the same once you have those different chemicals. Same thing with just having a crush. There's chemicals that have an impact on your brain of like, oh my God, they're perfect. They've talked to them for like 5 minutes. It's the fantasy they've built in their head that they're in love with. And that's equally as painful to like pop the bubble of like, but let's look at the facts. They haven't texted you, they haven't called you, right? I think it's being realistic with clients to not settle once they've established these are the absolutes I need in my relationship, and I don't want to be with somebody if they don't have those. And that's a healthy place to date from, I think. Still willing to compromise, but have some standards and own them.
Right, because it's like you're not gonna get everything on your list.
No.
Some people come to me with like 100 items of like personality traits, and I'm just like, okay, these are nice. I'm glad you have such a wide vocabulary of
Yeah.
values and traits. But what are like your top three needs, and then what are like your top five wants?
Yep.
And then those are all the things that are like negotiable. I think you should have those top three things where you're like, okay, I am not wavering on these. These are
Yes.
super important. They might be something around having a family or not having a family, religion, values, things like that is what I notice a lot in politics. Sadly, I hate that that comes up in dating, but it kind of goes back to your values in a way as well.
True. Yeah, I think it's largely that I love that you differentiate the needs and the wants and separate from those like core value lifestyle needs. There are those specific relational needs, like for our nervous system, how much communication do you want? Are love languages and apology language being spoken and received important to you? Like more of the everyday nuanced relational needs, I think are often easier to focus on, and so many people don't go to those core things first, they go right to those relational needs and then come to find out months, years later, "Oh, we never discussed if we wanted to have kids or not, and here I've built this relationship with this person," and it's heartbreaking when that conversation inevitably, hopefully, comes up of, "Wait, that's how you feel and think? I never." Some people never think to ask it, we're never taught to, or we ask it too early and it comes off as like, "That's a very intrusive question. Can we at least order an appetizer first?" Like, there's a balance. There's like a nice balance to it, I think.
Right. Yeah, it is. It kind of makes me think when my husband and I started dating, it was really important to me that, if we decided to have kids, which I was kind of on the fence back then, and he was
Yeah.
too, I was like, it's important to me that we raise them in the Jewish faith because that's how I was raised. And it was
Mhm.
so important to me. So honestly, on our like fourth or fifth date, I threw that out there to him,
Mhm.
because it felt right. And I was like, I don't want to waste anyone's time. And he's so, so opposed to this. But because we met on a dating app and don't have a matchmaker, that's
Right,
not something I would have known about him already.
right.
So, obviously it's different for everyone of when to ask that, but I really feel like it's so important before you're like fully committed and exclusive with someone to figure that stuff out.
Yes, especially if your goal of the relationship is like long-term monogamous marriage committed. Like if that's your path, definitely important to ask it. If you're looking to have a casual relationship, like I just want to date for practice or have a relationship for the sake of knowing what I'm like, knowing what they're like, depending on age, of course, and phase of life, post-divorce. The ideal is usually not to get right back into a serious relationship or a second marriage. It's to date around, to explore. So much nuance goes into this. That is really important to factor in. Also, those core values still do have play a part in how much you enjoy being around them. Because what if they love intense political debates, even if you're just looking for a casual relationship and you're like, I have literally no desire for this and I'm able to, okay. That still is going to cause a mismatch, but in a totally different way than like, I'm trying to build a life with someone.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think it's being clear, like, regardless of where you're at. If you're looking for something casual, be
Yep.
clear about it. If you're looking for something serious, be clear about it. Like, put it in your dating app profile. There's no shame in that. I think a lot of people are worried, like, oh, well, turn some people off, but like, you're
Good.
going to turn the right people on.
Turn people away. You should not be attractive to every single person on a dating app. That's either being a very good social chameleon and or having none of your own needs and wants identified to the point where you're and no standards where it's like, whatever, I'll take anything. I love all restaurants, all time of day, all this, all that. It's like, hey, sure, but let's maybe winnow it down to be more realistic because you don't want to attract the wrong kind of people. Then you find yourself, I'm sure you've seen this, they date and it's not conscious or intentional, and then they're 2 months in, they're a few dates in of like, "I like them, but I just don't know if I like them." And it's mainly sometimes because they don't have that identified in themselves. and so they're not authentically them. Therefore, they're not going to likely attract somebody who's on the other end of the table authentically their self either.
It's so true. I mean, it's like I feel like it's a little woo-woo to people sometimes, but it's like when you accept the things that maybe you consider like challenges or flaws about yourself,
Mhm.
and then your energy shifts because you're not like insecure about it or worried about it.
Yes.
You're gonna attract that good person in. And I see this play out all the time at the singles events that I host. Because you
Mhm.
can see, who is putting that good energy out and who's here just because I was like, you need to come and practice meeting some people. And they, were totally against it. And you can tell it's like, who is it that is just like people are coming up and wanting to talk to them, get to know them. And then who are the people that are maybe like following someone around all night trying to get them to say something?
Yes, like the idealized there's like ping, it's like this radar of like, that's the one, target acquired. And then they're just going around, it's like trying to make it work. The person's like, "Hi, I would like to have conversations with other people." Like, "That's totally cool. I'm just like so chill. I'll just be like over there when you're ready." When it's like not going and meeting other people, it's I get it. There's hot people out there. There's very attractive people for various traits and types. And let's say I don't know how your events work, if they get like a little write up of the people going, or if that's more nuanced with like actual matchmaking, but you can get your hopes up for even if you mention like, oh, there'll be, these types of people at this event that you might prefer, enjoy meeting them, and then they find the one that they're immediately synced with, and that's like, this is the one. I will make it work.
Right. And they're probably just judging that based on looks, I would assume.
Yeah,
Um, and that's something else that, bothers me, but is so important in dating. Obviously, you have to have physical
of course.
attraction, but I always tell people, like, in your top three needs, it cannot be something physical or superficial.
They are 6'7". Quality, I don't really care. They have a six pack, and right, like there's the attraction is important. Chemistry is important. Sex, when you're in a relationship, especially like we're talking about, that's the goal is like long term committed. It is like glue. It can really make a big impact. And if you have a positive experience and you're attracted to your partner, you want to be around them, you want to feel close, you like it. Nothing wrong with it. But if that's going to be the deal breaker between a really, really not perfect, but the best fit for you and not a great fit is their height, if they have abs or not, or like some other external feature that likely has no impact on their internal self, which is who you'll really be with for the rest of your lives once you're old and wrinkly and gray. If you make it that long, the looks don't matter as much. And I think being flexible on, I love this, but if they're a couple inches shorter and they have everything else I want, I'm okay with that. That's not settling. That's settling into reality. I think.
Exactly. And it's hard too because I think, I talk about this a lot with people. You watch movies and rom-coms and you watch The Ultimatum
Oh
and
yes.
everything seems like so much more exciting and like, oh, my life should be like that. And I just like hate Netflix for making shows like that because then people are like, oh, well, I went on a date and like it was good, but like good isn't okay anymore. Like it has to be like, oh, there was a spark.
Boom. Yeah. And that's what the bachelor and bachelorette set you up. You're not doing that in the first few months of dating. Maybe not even in the first year. You're not getting flown to these exotic locations. Nor on the flip side are you sometimes meeting the partner's parents in that amount of time either, which is
Right.
one of the most impactful episodes. Then we have a couple questions in the comments. One of the most impactful episodes, I can't remember the season, but it was, I think his name was Peter, the good looking guy who and then you see family and dad, I think, lived in a yurt and was very into more of I'm not intending to be disrespectful when I say this, but more of like the hippie free flow lifestyle. And you could see, I can't remember the girl's name, her response was like, wait, this is where you came from? Like the family of origin and the impact of that does play a large part. So not only for these unrealistic romantic vacation expectations, but also like knowing your family's partner or family that they came from is also really important too, I think. And reality shows, of course, you don't get views if it's realistic and paced. And like, it's the ultimatum was like, so here's the group therapist because all of you need to work on communication and attachment style differences and understand that like just maybe wait. And like an ultimatum is not the best way to get what you want necessarily, or indirectly you'll get something you don't want. It would have been for me would have been a much more enjoyable show as a therapist. I would have been like, yes, healthy relationships. I love this.
Yeah, I mean, as a matchmaker too, I would love that. Like maybe we should make the most boring reality dating show ever where everyone is like super healthy with boundaries and communication and we get to like, you get to work with them in therapy, I get to send them up on dates and no one will watch, but it'll be the greatest show ever.
Okay, but we're going to do that. I'm definitely going to circle back with you about that because it's not about the views, it's about the impact. And I feel like that would be such a healthy thing to be modeled for people watching because what do we look for shows for that? Escape as a numbing, sure, like they could be actual entertainment, but whether you look for that or not, your subconscious brain is ingesting it and
Mhm.
thinking it's acceptable, it's okay. Even if you're not, even if out loud you're like, oh my God, that's the worst, you're still viewing it. And if you're not also suggesting what is the positive alternative, you're going to end up with, okay. So we're definitely going to do that. And then we have a couple questions. Someone asked, why do you think some people hesitate to seek help from matchmakers or relationship coaches? Do you think there's still stigma around helping? Do you think there's still stigma around seeking help in terms of romantic relationships? I think yes. What do you
Oh, I would totally agree. I mean, part of my job is trying to help get rid of that stigma that
think?
maybe matchmakers are just like a dating service and it's kind of a scam. Or, I always tell people it's like you would hire someone to do a lot of things for you in your life.
Yes.
And your love life is arguably like one of the most important things, someone you're going to spend your whole life with. So, like, why wouldn't you like tap into an expert or at least just follow us on Instagram
Yeah.
and get advice that way?
Yeah, at a minimum, follow pages that you feel like you resonate with that help reduce your own stigma surrounding it and shake up some of those core beliefs that you have that you'd like to work on of like, I don't like with women I work with changing the way that they view men and their expectations in relationships is a large part of their success because of the core beliefs they come in with needing to be rewired for the sake of, oh, how am I supposed to find a husband if I think all men are literal incompetent trash? They're incongruent, right? Or how am I supposed
Exactly.
somebody to date if I don't feel confident about who I am or my dating abilities? Why not outsource to somebody who knows what they're talking about? Just like we hire many other professionals, sometimes out of need, sometimes out of lack of skill. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to change the oil on my car. Could I learn? Absolutely. Do I want to? Absolutely not. No, I have no interest in that. I'm sure if it became necessary at some point, I would change, but I would rather pay somebody to do that. And because of the hormones that get clouded when you date, it's all the more important to hire somebody who can help keep you grounded and filter for you and have your best interest at heart. That's why I love working with my clients because I'm okay. Yes, he is so hot, super hot. Love it. Yep. Yummy. Get it. But he's not giving you what you need and he never calls you or texts you. And they're like, okay, you're right. You're right. That is accurate. You got to get out of your own head, I think.
Exactly, and sometimes it's not even like a friend that can pull you out of that space because a friend might just feed into it and be like,
Yeah.
"Ooh, yeah, he's so hot. Go for it, girl. Get it," you know? But with us, we'll be like, okay, no.
No.
Let's
Yeah,
talk about that."
what if that wasn't sexy to you? And they're like, oh, you're right. And I'm like, there we go. Let's move forward. And then we have another person who mentioned, I think a lot of people may relate to this, feeling torn between wanting someone long term, but also having it be in quotes casual because they're wanting to be married again. And I
Mhm.
think for you, I'd love to hear your answer on this. Where people, when you're matchmaking, who are post divorce, what is that experience like for them?
Yeah, it's kind of fun because it's almost like a whole new world. For me, if I'm working with someone who has been divorced, I want them to honestly, it's a requirement for me that they have worked with a therapist or a coach after they got divorced. Just because it's so hard to process those emotions on your own. And I mean, come on, I get it. There's a lot of value in what you do and what a lot of coaches and therapists
Yeah.
do. So that is a requirement for me. And obviously that they are fully divorced and not separated or, anything like that. I get people that are like, oh, I'm just separated. I'm like, well, I think it's better to kind of close that chapter, move on and then figure out what you want in this new chapter.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's really fun to work with people who are because they're almost like just new and like so excited about like, oh my God, a dating app. I've never been on one. I'm sure now that, as I go on in this career, there will be more people that used dating apps before and then again after their divorce.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I think it's so important, and I'm sure you would agree that after you go through something like that, or even just a long-term relationship, like
Yep.
give yourself time to process it and don't just jump right in and, mask everything you're feeling.
Yeah, I have both a, personal and professional, comment to make about that, or like a personal share and a professional comment. It doesn't mean professionally, it does not mean be alone forever or don't heal relationally. Like the relational wound is from the relationship that ended. You can supplant that relationship, not saying you're going to date your therapist. I want to be very clear when I say what I'm about to say, but you can create a new close relationship that mirrors or mimics emotional validation, closeness, having a confidant, someone safe to tell your truth to and your feelings to, again, ideally in therapy, because the confidentiality aspect of it and the objective stance, if you prefer a coach, okay, make sure that are a good fit for you. You can heal with someone else, but don't find that person on a dating app. And this is my personal comment comes in because I had met someone wonderful, total catch. My family was like, he's the one. It was great. He just wasn't as divorced as he said he was. And he
Mm,
out of his not even ex-wife, still married, not even having a separation. Like all of it was just a very big lie. Like 2 before he decided to join the app that we met. And it all came out like week after week. I have something to tell you. And I'm like, what next? Like next week, I have something. I'm just like, this isn't working for me, buddy. Like either you're this or you're that. And of course, me being me growing up watching Catfish, I looked like through county court records. Like I went full like detective and I sat down with him calmly one day and I said, so this isn't gonna work. And I checked and there's no record of any of this stuff. So you don't, I know you're lying. This is an accusation. Like I had all of it printed out. And he was like, could you just yell at me instead? I was like, I'm also not gonna do that because that's not healthy either. And he's like, this is kind of scary. I've never had somebody talk to me who's angry without yelling. And I'm like, another reason why this won't work. Like it just had come out, but so many people go on an app thinking, I'll just get over it. I'll
mhm.
get over this by getting under or near whatever prep you want to use somebody else. Elementally, sure, your hormones are going to get jacked up and think, oh, this is a new person. I have new oxytocin now or vasopressin or whatever the other mental neurotransmitter towards this person. That's not going to help you move past the pain of the previous relationship ending, separation, divorce, whatever the ending was labeled, or what led to that in the first place. If you don't have relational awareness, what if you do have an anger problem that's led to the demise of every relationship? And here you are just going back on dating app after dating app, meeting partner after partner, cut it bleeding. What's the phrase? Bleeding on people who didn't cut you. That's essentially what it's like if you go on a dating app too soon after, because there's people on there like I was ready to date, ready to
Mhm.
what they just got out of. Like, I want marriage. You just got out of one. I'm not going to get there any faster by dating somebody who's like, oh, I'm not looking for that right now. Be authentic on your profile. It's okay if it weeds people out. Ideally, you both want the same thing when you're partnering with someone.
Right. Yeah. It just won't really work if you want different things. So it's just better to be upfront about that.
Even I have a few couples that this has come up in the last few years because of the pandemic and moving and relocation. That is also a very, very big part of your own personal life. And the older you are, likely the more established you are and where you're at, or you have a deadline of I'm only going to be here for this time and then I'm, making a move. That can also play a large part on your compatibility long term with somebody. If your preference is not long distance relationship, nor do you want to move, partnering with somebody who's about to leave on a trip, travels regularly for work, or lives by coastal or, across continents may not be for that reason the right fit. Everything else can be checked off, but geography does play a big part in relationships as well. What do you think about that?
Oh, it definitely does. I feel like with COVID, I have expanded kind of where a lot of my clients are like, okay, I want to date in Denver, but also in Dallas or
Yeah.
Denver, San Francisco, and 10 other places. So yeah, it's kind of interesting because like starting something, just saying, hey, this is going to be long distance, is not really ideal. I always tell people if you are like spending a lot of time in that other city, like I'm in, that's great. But it's also hard because if you're dating in Denver and you're dating in Dallas and both places and then juggling people, going back and forth, you know, it makes it tough, but some people make it work and that's just how their lives are. They just move around and travel all the time. But again, you can set boundaries around that too, like literally physical boundaries
Mhm.
of like, hey, I'm open to meeting someone, within a half an hour where I live in this city and a half an hour where I live in this other city. So you're not driving yourself crazy and like just driving to dates your entire life.
Yes, that was one question the matchmaker had asked me. It was like, "Are you willing to date in LA?" And I think I had a visceral nausea response. I was like, "Well, no. I lived in LA. I went to UCLA. I've done that lifestyle. It's not for me." And I would have been lying to that person if I had said, "Yeah, LA's like no problem." It was a big problem. There was literally with my schedule of only really like Thursday nights or Friday nights being date nights, possibly or Saturday. I had no desire to sit in traffic. I'm probably my worst self after I've just sat in traffic. That is not sexy to show up on a date frustrated post road rage and just like, ugh, no, way too chaotic. Like, be honest with yourself when you're even setting your parameters for dating apps yourself. If you're the type of person who doesn't want to live your life outside of 10 to 15 miles of your home, don't set your radius for 100 miles, probably would be my advice. Like, really be real with yourself. And yeah, you might not have as many matches, but it's quality over quantity.
Totally. And I want to just mention one random thing, and I'm curious if anyone listening has noticed this lately, but I will, sometimes go into my clients' Hinge profiles or other dating profiles and like give them some feedback. We'll redo them, all that jazz. And there's something going on with Hinge. I don't know if anyone else is having this issue, but like I have all these women with amazing profiles. We do their
Yep.
photos, we redo the whole thing, and then they aren't getting any matches. Or I have a guy that we redid his profile, and all he's getting is women who he would never even remotely be
Nice.
attracted to or a fit for. So, Hinge, can you get back to us on that? What are you doing?
Picture after I do know it was a couple years ago that having a similar problem and a lot of people had success. Well, back then it was also very skewed. My male clients had like the hottest, best matches ever. And the female clients were like, this is like it's either my dad or somebody who's like a little boy that I would never date. Like they're like 35. Like, I don't want to date a 21-year-old. Like he's cute, but no. Or it's like showing them even when their age bracket wasn't set that. So there was like a tweak, like a weird thing happening. But I think it was skewed back then for other reasons, and like the percentage of what gender is on each app also plays a role. Like, what is the population pool you're actually pulling from, and what parameters have you set? But I have had that actually. A couple of my clients go through that also. Hinge used to be their go-to instead of, let's say, Bumble or obviously Tinder. For
Mhm.
I want the ones who I work with who are like, I want to be married. But I've also known people who have met their husband on Tinder and they're very happy. More about intention, but yes, Hinge. If you can let us know what's going on with your algorithm, people want to use your app, but it's not fun to feel like you have no matches.
Right. It gets
Yeah,
discouraging. So, I'm just like, hey, delete it and try something else.
yeah. Maybe delete it and re-download it. Like create a new profile, see if that refreshes the system. Especially, I know some of my clients, we've been working together for a while, and if they dated, they've been in a relationship, something happens where like it wasn't a good fit, so they're back on the dating scene. They kind of like ping pong until they find the one or the one they want to be with. And they notice that the same person is on there year after year. And either they've never updated their profile, likely they forgot to delete it, or they're updating it, but they're still consistently single after 6 or 7 years. And the client they work, they're like, both are equally as concerning. Like, if you don't
Yeah.
delete the app, sure, I can give you a pass, I guess, if that's the real reason. But then, like, what is going on that it's been 6, 7 years and it doesn't seem like there's been a break at all with that. What would you say to people who are frustrated with dating apps? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I would say take a break. Seriously. Like you're not going to miss anything, but
No.
take a break. And that could be a day, that could be a
Yeah.
week, that could be a month. Check in with yourself of like what feels good, when to go back on because it's the same kind of thing we were talking about. Even in dating apps, if you're approaching it with that energy of just desperation and like, oh, I have no matches, I want a match, like this sucks. Like you probably aren't going to get great matches. So
Mm-mm.
putting that out there of having that good energy and taking a break. It's the same thing like if you're working a lot and you're feeling like you're getting burnt out or overwhelmed, like go for a walk around the block or maybe take a vacation. So,
Yeah.
it depends on the person, but I just want to say to everyone, it's okay to take a break. There will be plenty of single people when you get back. maybe even some new ones that are even better that you haven't met yet. So,
Yeah.
this like FOMO about like missing someone if you're off for a week, like
There's gonna
it's
be a
okay.
well, yeah, and in that break, if you choose to work on yourself and learn more about your own likes, dislikes, which as we talked about at the top of the hour, the chances of even you having a different perspective to view some similar profiles, right? You could have seen this guy and been like, not for me, not for me. But with this new lens of your own self development and knowledge, you could read it and go, wait a second, that actually, I do like that. Or I have worked on my attachment system enough to not be turned on by the avoidant, non texting, whatever. So when a guy puts, I value communication, I actually like that rather than feel like, oh, I'm going to be smothered if I'm avoidant, or, oh, that means they're going to really like me. And you come off really intense from the start if you're more, anxiously attached. And I think knowing more about yourself can't hurt when it comes to dating, either on an app, in person, or for a matchmaker. I would love to hear if it's easier for you to work with people who have more self awareness, not as a judgment to those who haven't developed it yet, but it may make the starting point different if they come in with some sort of awareness.
Oh, 1,000%. I've definitely learned my lesson working with people that don't have any. And they're
Yeah.
just like, oh, well, I'm the shit. I'm the best. And I just need you to find me great people. And
Expect-
right. And, my whole process is, you work with me, but they also work hand in hand with a dating coach and a stylist and an astrologist and, a barber to make sure they're looking good. So, I always know if people like aren't open to just like trying out those things and knowing that maybe someone could give them a piece of advice they haven't heard yet, that's my personal red flag of like, not the client for me. Sadly, I wish I could help everyone. I'm sure you feel the same way, but having
Except
an open mind is like the only thing I need when I'm setting someone up on dates.
yes, I did, my other podcast I have it was one of our earlier episodes, and it's now I love when things I'm like, "This feels right," end up getting, like, researched. That willingness is the number one trait that has a positive impact on, like, the quality and longevity of a relationship, and, we did a whole episode, and that is the trait that I look for. It's what I tell my clients, and, like, fast forward a couple years later, I'm like, "Sweet validation," like, this feels so good to have that because it helps people understand willingness and an open mind, even if that includes I've opened my mind enough to know what I'm closed off to, right? I know what my hard limits are. That's a much healthier place. Meaning you're not going to get as attached to the wrong or hurtful or negative narrative enforcing kind of people because you understand, oh, settling for not that in that sense, but settling into somebody who is a good enough fit. They have all the things that I want, most of them, let's say. They have everything I need, they have most of what I want, and they don't have any of what I do not want or will not stand for. That's the person for you. Looking inward to yourself and in your partner first. Yeah, think they're cute or attractive, but let it build over time. The right fit is like a slow burn more than it is like how The Ultimatum or any of those other shows are like, they're just so hot and this, and we went on this crazy exciting date. And that's like half of the thing with Bachelor and all these other dating app shows. It's like redoing the shaky bridge study where I walks across the bridge and it's solid and he doesn't ask the hot girl out at the end, or he walks across the bridge and it's shaky and he does ask the girl out. Like your adrenaline and all this excitement does have like, a novel experience. Is like, oh, this is so fun. It may not be as fun the more you do it.
It's so true,
Yeah.
and I have to do so much work with
Yeah.
people of, like, when they do go on a first date and they call me and they're like, "Oh my god, it was amazing. We, like, ended up hanging out for 4 hours, and then we're seeing each other again tomorrow." And I'm like, "Hold on, like, can you wait
No.
a few days? Don't see each other tomorrow." Like,
Mhm.
spread this out. Like you said, the slow burn is everything, even though
Yeah.
we're taught that that's not good, and, like, maybe means someone's not that interested or not that into you.
Right.
But just think about like your relationship trajectory. If you start off like so hot and heavy, and then you're probably gonna have some super low lows, and then you're gonna have some high highs, and just continue on. And like that's just gonna be a lot to handle for the rest of your life.
And for whoever you're dating, likely
Mhm.
the fill your own life with something you enjoy and create a solid sense of independence and a life you love, it increases the joy that you have in other parts of your life tenfold. You'll have more time for dates. And if you are consciously dating, you may want to have a night to yourself at the end of the week. Friday nights might be your date night, and Saturday nights you're free. You don't have anything on the books, but you want to have some alone time, right? While you still can before you get married and you live with somebody and they're in your house all the time. But there's this experience of I want to know myself. And same thing with a job interview. If you were going in without a collection, it's like an interview. You're going into the job being like, I need this job. You don't understand. Like, if I don't get this job, my whole life is going to be crap. Like, that's intense energy to approach a job. I hope
Yeah.
that, but the same is true in dating. If you're showing up to the first date like, "This has to work," people can sense that versus like, "We'll see. I like to keep my options open. I'm not gonna put all my eggs in one basket. You seem great. I love the company. I'm interested in learning more about the benefits and what the work-life balance is like, as well as what the company culture is like." Like, approach dating like that. It makes it much easier to not get caught up in, "Oh, I can just see them tomorrow." That's not realistic. That shows that you either have a very open schedule, you're a people pleaser, you cancel another plan because you're getting caught up in hormones, like, the list goes on of why that's possible, and, hey, if that worked for you and it's your success, I'm not knocking it, but that would not be advice I would give to people just starting out.
I would agree. I would also not give that advice,
Yeah.
but, I have also seen it work. I have a couple who got married
Oh,
and,
yeah.
like, they date 1, it was amazing, like, marathon date, and I was like, "Oh god," that doesn't always work out well, but they're married now, and they spent every day together,
Yep.
literally since the first date, and that just works for them. So,
I've had a couple personally, I know, and professionally as well, where that's been the dynamic, and a large part of at least if I on the spot can think of why. In some cases, it was they, like, hadn't done the work yet, so it was easier to spend all that time with the person, and it ended up coming out later. But in other cases, they had done a lot of work. They were so clear from the start that the first date with them was, yeah, the first time they met, but individually, they had met themselves on such a deep level that that first date really set the platform of like, "Wow, this is the person I've been looking for. I don't wanna waste any more time, and I really do think they're the one." Not in the creepy, clingy, "I'm obsessed with you" way, but in a like, "Yep, I feel good. Like, my body is saying that this no more need to date. Let's try this out."
yeah,
Yeah.
I like that a lot. I wonder what your thoughts are on, like, trusting your gut on dates.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I had a couple, that went out this past weekend, and, like, on paper, oh my god, everything is aligned. I'm like, they're gonna really like each other, like, attractiveness, everything, values, all of it. So,
Mhm.
they end up doing a virtual date to start because 'cause they're in different cities, and, afterwards, she was like, "I just gotta trust my gut," and I wasn't into it. And to me, I'm, like, kind of frustrated as a matchmaker, but also, like, okay, you do have to trust your gut, but sometimes you can't put words to it. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on this.
So, I like to describe great question. I and there's a lot of variable I, like, look at things like researcher, there's a lot of variables there that could have had an impact, like, what day was the date? What did both do for work? Do they work virtually all the time? Were they distracted? Did they show up treating like it was a real like, there's, like, probably 20 things that just flew through my mind, that you're like, "What are the third variable problems? What are the outlying impacts?"
Right.
But that trusting your gut, where do you feel it in your body? And this largely relates to like, if you know your Enneagram style, if you know your human design, like knowing more of those self assessments. Like for me, I'm an eight, Enneagram 8, talking no one like a challenger leader. My instinctual center is actually in my gut. I feel things in my stomach, pit of my stomach, my full body or nose. I like tune in and I put my hand here, but I'm like, no, like, I literally feel the voice coming from my gut or yes, and people feel that in different ways. Is it their throat? Is it their brain? Is it their heart? Where is that system in your body? So if you haven't, go take the Enneagram. It'll tell you part of the program I teach, but it tells you where your instinct center is in your body. That's your gut. Like, where's your gut feeling coming from? And if you're experiencing that, really check with yourself. Is this coming from my true? Is it true? Like verifying like feminine energy. Is it true that this is not the right fit? Or am I saying it's not the right fit and I got to go with my gut because I actually know this person is a really good match, but I'm not ready to become who I need to be to date them? Or I really like them, but I feel like there's something in their brain that's going, you haven't healed this yet. And that's why their guts telling them this isn't a good fit. I like to spin it in the positive, know where your gut is in your body, and also check with yourself. Why might your gut, if it is indeed telling you no, and that's true, why might it be telling you that's not true? And of course, the real reason could be it just isn't a good fit and we're not inside their body, thankfully, ever, that we would ever be able to know, oh, that's how you felt. For sure, don't go on a date with them again. So I would encourage that person to trust their gut, but also ask me being a pusher, like the scene in Mean Girls, I'm a pusher, I push people. I would be inquisitive and very curious. How do you usually make decisions with your gut? Are they usually right or wrong? What happens when you trust your gut? What happens when you don't trust your gut? I would ask more well, like a holistic approach to their gut.
Right. Cause yeah, it's like, hey, if they always trust their gut and it works for them, like I'm not challenging that. But I
No,
am also on the same page as you of like, I always want people to like do the second date and just give it a chance.
yeah,
Usually people are nervous. I mean, almost always on a first date. I don't care how many you've been on.
of
And, it's like always giving that second shot. I am totally for because you might as
yes,
well. You're not wasting anyone's time unless you know for sure, okay, there's
yeah,
no potential this could go anywhere.
yeah. There have been back years ago, back when I was dating, there was that experience where first date, you're like, nope, or this feels off. I really don't want to stick around to find out why. And then, whatever it is, you see them either on an app or your friend matched with them and told you a horror story they had. Like you end up confirming your gut in a way that you don't need to actually stick around to have like person to person confirmation, but sometimes it could be your attachment system. I know that gets overblown a lot on the internet now, but there is still truth. It's not something to blame your gut on. It is a factor though in making decisions. Does it feel like the right person? Are you insecurely attached and you went on a date with somebody who's really secure and your brain's like, yeah, not enough chaos for me. No thanks. Is your is your gut leading you to truth or misleading you down this path of just like what's been grooved out for you thus far, which is these limiting self beliefs a lot of people have, like, I'm too much, I'm not enough. This person said I was really great and I believed them, but then a part of me didn't. So, second date canceled. I don't want to be with somebody who sees me for like all that I am and thinks that I'm a worthy person, which could be uncomfortable if you haven't done the work to realize that yourself. So, for anyone listening and to your clients, where is your gut in your body, and does it usually ring true for you? Does it lead you or does it guide you?
Right? I mean, that's such a good question to contemplate. I love it. I have everyone take the Enneagram, so
Yes,
work on the gut feeling in there too.
super, super important. I did a few trainings on it and I like nerd out on things, especially, I mean, not probably not a shock, but I just love learning about everything possible that could help people, because I can't save everyone, but the ones who want to get help. And it's not about saving by any means. It's really like, oh, they're employing me to help them with being their best self. I'm going to equip myself with all of the knowledge possible to help them out. When people take the Enneagram, it is really helpful either to decide, oh, wait a second, I'm not that far off. I just have these traits, cultivate. And people have told me I've been whatever for having these traits my whole life. And then you come to find out that they're the opposite of you. You're their growth edge or you're their stress edge, right? Every number has, like, if I'm growing, I turn into a two, which is the helper giver. But if I'm stressed, I turn into more of a loyal, no opinions, just go with the flow, not very assertive. So knowing more about yourself also helps you in dating. And at the worst, can create a cool conversation with somebody and they're like, yeah, I'm not into the woo. Even better. Way better to find that out on the first date versus like two or three and where you're like, well, my birth chart said this, that, whatever. And there's memes about that all the time. Like the guy texts his mom, like, what time was I born at? And the mom goes, no, leave her. Absolutely not. Like, do not date someone like that.
Oh my god.
Do you have any this has been so fun, I wanna have you on again. Do you have any closing thoughts or advice that you wanna share with the people listening?
Ooh, I mean, I always like to encourage people. I think want to go back to what we said. If you're feeling burnt out on dating,
Yes.
just stop, take a break. I think I just want to emphasize that. And then before you go into dates, whether it's a first date, a second date, or even a relationship, you could rewind and do some of this, but know your boundaries and what you're okay with. This is a big thing I think that comes up on first dates, even now, like in a post-COVID world of like, are you comfortable even hugging someone? Are you comfortable with a kiss on the first date? Have those boundaries going into your dates of what you're comfortable with in terms of like physical intimacy? What are you comfortable with in terms of someone paying on a date or you paying on a date or splitting the bill?
Mhm.
Have all those things in mind before you go on a date. And if you need help figuring out what things to think about, I'm sure both Talia and I can help you with that.
Yes, follow our pages. I love your post as well and your podcast. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
and if you are listening to this and you're like, "What do I do?" Take a look at whatever we give on social media. And then if you're really curious, we not this sounds very odd, but I don't mean it in a weird way. We're both available for hire or consultation that we would love to give you more catered and in-depth advice and feedback. And really what it's all about is get a general sweep first, equip yourself with the knowledge, and then from there you go, oh, these are the things I've learned I still need to work on. And I learned that just from social media.
Exactly. And then I want to mention one other thing too. I know I said I work mostly in Colorado, but I know amazing matchmakers all over the country. And a lot of matchmakers too have free databases you can join. So honestly, it's not a bad idea to throw yourself in a couple of free databases, put that out into the world. You don't necessarily have to pay, you imagine like tons and tons of money to have a matchmaker join the database, put it out there that you're open, go to matchmaking events. And I would love to chat with you too if you have questions about like finding the right matchmaker for you as well.
Yeah, let's do that on the next time you come on. We'll do like
Yeah.
all about matchmaking and you can run us through your favorite question systems and what that would be like. I would love to hear that.
Oh, totally. Cause yeah, it is kind of stressful. Sometimes it can feel like a sales pitch, when you're hiring a
Mhm.
matchmaker. So we can dive into that much more next time.
Yes, I would love that. Thank you so much, Abby, for your time today. And I look forward to talking to you really soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Talia. This was
Thank you,
fun.
everyone.